and this doesn't teach people to be critical. And the critical paradigm, challenging assumptions and so on. And so what we're doing here is we're looking to produce what I think is we've got to be very careful about Olympic education, which tends to be an everythingism about the IOC. Okay? And these programs, Olympic education, not Olympism education, Olympic education, doesn't have any particular way of teaching. It doesn't promote physical activity in sport because it goes on in the classroom, colouring in flags, counting up who won gold medals. I mean, is that relevant to young people? You as a coach probably, I hope you agree with me on this. And sport and physical education, doing it actively, this is not happening in Olympic education. It's in a classroom. And was this de Coubertin's vision? I don't think so. I don't think so. And so Olympic education is not maximising a valuable framework for the culture of movement. It's not maximising it. Instead, we have a mythology of sport and idealism, how sport is so good for you, and it doesn't promote a criticality, it doesn't look at social injustices, and it doesn't look at inequalities. And as a coach, I think you've got a responsibility to look at those things. And when we don't do these sorts of things, the idea of thinking critically becomes a bit of a casualty. And so, let's return to Olympism. Remember, you should be all about to say this with me now. Balance or integrating sport, culture and education. Balanced development of mind, body and character. Mind, body, will and mind. The joy and effort. Role modelling and social responsibility. Universal ethics. Tolerance, generosity. Friendship, unity. Non-discrimination. Respect for others. Wonderful way to live our life. Wonderful way to live our life. And so this is from an Olympism education point of view, which I believe coaches should be looking to do, is a culturally relevant, experiential process of critically learning an integrated set of life principles through the practice of sport. Great philosophy. Great philosophy. And so, Olympism education has less emphasis on the technical aspects of coaching, on the Olympic Games and the Olympic movement. It's more on the philosophy and culturally relevant practices of Olympism. It emphasises a particular pedagogy of learning and fosters meaning-making and teaching our athletes to be critical, to spot injustices, to spot inequalities, to spot abuses of power. And heaven knows we hear stories of coaches abusing their power. It aligns with physical education in schools, hopefully. In New Zealand, I think New Zealand was the first country in the world to bring Olympism into their physical education curriculum. And it's about producing critically active citizens and athletes. Athletes are part of the citizens, aren't they? And so as an Olympism education requirement, it requires a general framework upon which we can operate. And this is a difficult part now for coaches. Right? And this is where I think it would be good in your country if your sporting body, the Olympic movement in your country could help develop this framework. It requires people, coaches, to know aspects of how people learn. How does your athlete learn? This is pretty important if you're going to be a coach as an educator, if we're going to be professional. And I'm suggesting, and I haven't got time to go through it today, but I'll give the clue to your organisations who may be sitting in the room, is I'm suggesting that they look up how the constructivist pedagogies. I could spend hours and hours on this with you, how to go about this. And it cannot be this is the one way to do it. There are many, many ways to do it, depending on your environment. And so, as we go through, we look at the literature around Olympism pedagogy. There's not much. There's not much out there saying how to do it. And this is a problem. And this is the challenge to your Olympic movement and your government sporting body, is let's then start to investigate how they can help you coaches develop ways, coaching processes to introduce this Olympism into your culture. Okay? And it needs to be addressed. To be honest, my time is absolutely wasted unless we can address these sorts of things. So the challenge is really for your Olympic movement, your sporting organisations, your government organisation for sport, to look at how they can do these things. And so what is wanted from pedagogies? There's all those sorts of things there. Critical thinking, moral and ethics of sport, construction of meaning, questioning, learning about social justices, inequalities and so on. These are the things that I'm meaning about Olympic pedagogies, or Olympic ways to teach, Olympism ways to teach. And so Olympism education is about this. It's athlete-centred, not coach-centred. It's about a holistic view of the person. It's about the practice and philosophical understanding of Olympism. It's about the ethical base of sport. Fairness, justice, equity. It's about fostering a critical consumerism. If you're going to take part in sport, and your coaches are this, it's about building that critical consumerism. And it aims to develop people for a better world. It's not hard to understand. It's hard to do. And it's about capturing the educative and social value and potential of sport. And so we come to two major tensions, and then we're going to get into a practical example. Two major tensions. One is this universal? Does this apply to every country in the world, irrespective of the context they're in? And what is a real working definition of Olympism for our country? It will differ. Remember, I used a working definition. And so, what we need for universalism, Parry argues that we should have some sort of agreement worldwide on this. It should include all nations, genders, race, class, and so on. And Sarah Tetzel suggests that Olympism as a universal concept is merely assumption that has strong Eurocentric roots, and the values inherent in the concept are orientated towards the Western world. So there is criticism, but a solution is to look at it like this, is to say, look, let's look at an umbrella. Let's look at the black part, the universal values. And if we could agree on balanced development, joy and effort, role modelling, and universal ethics, we could agree on that, then each of those colours there represent each different context, each different country, and we can interpret the black umbrella according to our context. So, we do have some universal agreement, but we also have particular ways of operating, particular interpretations in our own country. And so respect for universal fundamental principles, ethical principles, and vagueness is a problem. But we can do this if we put it into our own context, which I challenge you people in Guatemala, with your Olympic Committee and your governments, sporting organisations, to put that into context. What does this mean in Guatemala? Okay? What does it mean? And it means, what does generosity mean? What does tolerance mean? What is unity? What is friendship? What is non-discrimination? What does respect mean in your country? And so the challenge is moving from the technical side of coaching, all right, to the coach as educator. And the coach as educator highlights the important role of education in your athletes. It challenges existing coaching practices. It will take time. It will take time. And as the very prominent Australian academic has said, we need to be modest about what we can do and claim to do. Be very modest. And so being modest sometimes puts us on a collision course. We can problematize things, and we know the realities of the coaching process. I do not know the realities of your coaching environment. I know some of the realities in New Zealand, but not Guatemala. But the important point which I challenge you with is looking at moving from a technical coach to the coach as educator. The coach as educator educates the athlete in a holistic manner around the principles of Olympism. And there will be debate. There will be very, very strong debates. And some people will get very upset with the debate, even with what I'm saying. But in conclusion, for this part of the session, it is very simple, really. I want you to recognise that coaching generates debate. I want you to accept that your role is coach as educator. It would be really good to say, okay, if I'm a coach as educator, I need to coach about Olympism. What do I coach about Olympism? Balanced development, role modelling, joy of effort, those universal ethics. And Olympism to be the core of your philosophy of coaching, the philosophy of athlete learning. And it's to understand why. Why is this important? Going back to those 5 different ways of thinking. It's very simple why it's important. Very simple. It's important for this. It's important for this, to make a better world. Developing people to make a better world. Now when I say that, you can see I'm coming from the humanist view of the way we look at the world. But there are words in there like critical, which means I'm drawing on the critical paradigm as well. That we become educated, joyful, virtuous and critical consumers of the movement culture. And so the coaching process, the coach as educator, is to look at helping people develop a flourishing life. Now people, what I want to just move to for about a quarter of an hour is giving you a practical example of how this is operated with a very high profile sports team in New Zealand, which is called the All Blacks, which is using a rugby term, and our All Blacks are presently world champions at the moment. We will find out in 2 weeks' time whether they are the world champions again for another 4 years. But this team, or the All Blacks, have gone through a complete change in the last 15 years. An absolute, complete change. They have changed their culture. They have changed their coaching processes. And it took a lot of work, but boy, has it been successful. So much so, it's successful in all sorts of ways, but if you want to just look at winning and losing, I think they're operating at the moment over the last 10 years at 92% success winning rate. 92%. The most successful professional sports team in the world. And they have gone through a huge cultural change. Let me give you the scenario way back in 2004. Way back in 2004. There was a culture problem with the All Blacks. They had a partying culture. Their excess drinking was part of their culture. They had a violent culture where they would drink alcohol and then start to fight. So it was a violent culture. They had inappropriate socialising with women, created a lot of problems. And putting those three things together, the players used to close ranks, and then there was a culture of silence. They wouldn't let the coaches, the administrators know what was happening. And as a result, it was a very unhappy team. All right? Now remember, I'm focusing on culture here. Focusing on culture and education with the All Blacks. And remember, culture is more important than strategy. A culture will beat a strategy every time. And so this is the situation with the All Blacks. And this is the situation where I was asked to come in with another colleague and change this culture. And so, came in, and guess what? I introduced them to this. You've seen this before? It's called Olympism. I didn't use the name Olympism. Why didn't I use the name Olympism? Because the All Blacks rugby players in New Zealand think they are better than Olympians. Well, we're All Blacks. We're gods in New Zealand. So don't tell us we're Olympians. So, but the same principles apply. Balanced development, joy and effort, role modelling, universal ethics, generosity, tolerance, friendship, unity, non-discrimination, respect. This philosophy was introduced to the All Blacks, and it has become an underlying foundational thing that they've built their success on. And so how do we do it? What do we do? Firstly, we said to the coaches who asked to change the culture, okay, right, we need leadership. We need leadership in the team. You are not to pick a team each time you have a game. You are to give some players, I suggested 6, they said that they agreed to 10. I suggested you give 6 players certainty for the next 4 years. That means you tell these players, these 6 players are going to be All Blacks for the next 4 years. If you want to change the culture, you've got to have leadership in the team. If you want to have leadership, you must have some sort of certainty with some players. I said 6 players, they wish to have 10. Okay? And we built a legacy around this. And the legacy was based on Olympism and also a humanistic theory by a guy called Carl Hodges. And so if we look at this, we start off with a search for identity. How do we do this? We looked at the identity. And when we look at identity, we have over here the real self. This is what I'm really like. This is how I behave. This is how I communicate. Over here, we have the ideal self. This is what everyone else wants me to be. This is how everyone else wants me to behave. This is how everyone else wants me to think. And so we had a tension, didn't we, between the two. Right? So we adopted the philosophy that we've got to find an equilibrium between us. We've got to find an equilibrium between the real self, the ideal self. The real team, the ideal team. This is a huge challenge. And so we had to establish the leadership group, which I just mentioned before. And that leadership group consisted of 10 people. And then we said, okay, to these 10 people, and the coaches, and the managers, right, we need to adopt a particular leadership style. And we said there are basically 3 styles you can choose from. One is you can choose that authoritarian style where the coach is the boss and everyone does what the coach says. Laying down that law. Another way was to have a democratic model where everyone sits around and highlights issues and votes on issues and so on, and to decide. Coaches, managers, players, to decide what is to be done, how it is to be done, when it is to be done. Or we could have a consultative model, right? The delegation model, where the captain, the vice captain, in consultation with coaches and managers, delegate responsibilities to group leaders, the other leaders in the team. And they seek assistance from this. What the All Blacks developed, they decided they would go with this delegation model. Okay? With strong notions of democracy. They absolutely rejected the authoritarian model. And you know what? The authoritarian model relates directly to the technical coach. This model here, with elements of this democratic model, relates to the coach as the educator. And so the leadership provided meaning in the team. Responsibilities. What does this mean? So we sat down with the leaders and said, what does all this mean about leadership? So we talked about leadership. We looked at control and decision making. How was this going to work in a delegated, democratic environment with a professional sports team? And it took a lot. It took a lot of work with the coaches to let control go and hand it over to the players. It took a lot of work to do that. And I take my hat off to those coaches because they encouraged it to happen. And we looked at, okay, how many people do we need in this leadership team? What's the size? What are the behaviours that we are wanting from our leaders? How do we want them to behave? The real self. How are we going to monitor that behaviour? What are the accountabilities that we want? How are we going to resolve conflicts between people? How are we going to communicate at all levels of the team? And what's our expectation around performance to excel, to be the best we can be? What is the expectation that the leaders have of all the other players? What are the expectations that the leaders have of the coaches? What are the expectations that the coaches have of the leaders? All these things had to be brought together in a learning environment. And so the leadership landscape, the real leader, what do I do and what am I like? That's what we wanted to develop. The real leader, not the ideal leader of what everyone else wants me to be like. And so they had to find some sort of equilibrium between this. And so moving on, we taught the players and the coaches what young people are like today. What is the difference between young people and old people today from yesteryear? What are they like? And so we went through all those characteristics, the research on what young people are like, trying to make what we're doing relevant to these players. Relevant to these players. And we looked at some possibilities, techniques and tools in which we could do this. And this was the hardest thing to overcome. We had to agree, the leaders had to agree, the coaches had to agree that everyone had to let leadership grow around them. Not to be authoritarian, but to delegate and to be democratic and let leadership grow around them. This was very important. And remember that the underlying philosophy of the leadership group was balanced development of mind, body and character. Or body, will and mind. The joy and effort. So we had to teach them how to celebrate without getting drunk. Had to teach them that. Role modelling. We had to teach them how to role model. But the important thing was, what do we want to role model? And they wanted to role model generosity, tolerance, friendship, unity, non-discrimination, respect for others. That's what they role modeled. And these are the things that we've had to work on. And so, on some reflections, we have to say, how do I as a leader cope with the tensions between the real self, the ideal self, the real team, the ideal team? And as it unfolded, when the All Blacks in a game became under pressure, the call would go out. 4 words. Real self, real team. Real self, real team. They knew what they had to be like. Okay? And should the coach understand what these young players were like. Of course they had to. And that's the challenge to you people today, is are you learning about what young people are like, or are you just teaching the technical skills of your activity? And so they identified what they needed to learn and what the things they can do. They sat in class and did this. And the fundamental mindset was a huge change. Now I want you to look at this. This is a really, really important slide. They changed the emphasis on a 4-year cycle between World Cups from pure performance every time to growth and development for 3.5 years, and in the last 6 months before a World Cup, performance. They changed from pure performance to growth and development of people. Growth and development of people. They adopted the humanist paradigm. They adopted the motto, better people make better players. So grow the players to grow the team. Better people make better players. Grow the players to grow the team. And they had player and coach accountabilities. They looked at the real self and the real team. They looked at leadership and the importance of role modelling. What do I role model? Go back to the philosophy of Olympism. That's what they role modelled. And it was a very much an education environment. A coach educator, player educator. Really, really powerful. And this is what they said. This is what people said. This is the insights into what they said. In general, all players thought that the leadership group was worthwhile. They thought it was very powerful. Right? The head coach stressed how important he viewed the whole program and thought the results from the end of the year tour were significantly influenced from what had previously done with the leadership group. So the coach was totally committed to this and thought this was very valuable. The head coach believed the group allowed players to participate in decisions and therefore own the team. Right? The players own the team. And player one spoke about the worthwhileness and believed from a personal point of view that his learning helped him in his personal life. Boy, that's powerful stuff, isn't it? Helped him in his personal life. Coach 2, the other coach, talked about the need for everyone to view the experience as a growth one. Right? Growth as opposed to performance. Okay? And that he believed that when he took the team to the UK, this was the easiest team he'd ever been with. Powerful. And players always expressed that when we had classroom sessions, they had to be really valuable and reach agreement on issues. And it was important to share knowledge. And they said the growth actually equals an increase in performance. So, in evaluating it with the New Zealand Rugby Union, they said this program will endure for many years. It will endure for many years. They thought what was introduced, the idea, the philosophy, was starting to affect sport globally. People thought, what's going on with the All Blacks? What are they doing? Why are they so good? What is happening? Why are they keeping out of trouble? Right? The team became very accessible to New Zealand public. And the New Zealand public and the rest of the world warmed to them. They loved them. Why did they love them? Because they were demonstrating, role modelling the power and potential of sport. And this is important. We changed the paradigm of sport to a humanistic one with critical elements to it. Not only in New Zealand, but starting to affect globally. And perhaps the greatest achievement of all this that's going on is that it has unified New Zealand. This team has really unified New Zealand, and New Zealand are very proud of it. And so this is what we've done with the All Blacks. We moved to the coach as educator. What do they educate? They educated in a collaborative and democratic way the principles of Olympism, which was the most important thing was they moved to a growth and development strategy as opposed to performance. But, as we've seen, the growth and development has actually meant increased performance. This is what's happened now. What is happening now, they've even developed it further and further, and really developing it further than what I'll show you here. And so we've come now to the whole notion of this: better people make better players, grow the players to grow the team. Thank you very much. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Cheers.